All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our community meeting on proposed green building reach codes. I'd like to start with a round of introductions. So my name is Andrea Chow. I'm the Sustainability Analyst for the City of San Mateo, and I am the host for this meeting. I'm also going to introduce my colleague, Denise Garcia, who's a management analyst who is supporting this meeting, and I will turn it over to other city staff to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kleinbaum. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and I'm also helping with Andrea supporting the meeting.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Weigel, the city's communications manager, and I'll be helping facilitate the Q&A and the polls today.
Go for it, Blake.
Hi, my name is Blake Hershaft. I'm with Peninsula Clean Energy as a programs manager. My background, I have a professional engineer's license in the state of California for heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and plumbing design.
Hi everyone, my name is Farhad Farahman, Associate Director with TRC. I have also a professional engineering license and have a background in mechanical design engineering, and have been most recently working in cost effectiveness analysis and state and local policy adoption.
Hi, I'm Jose Garcia, Senior Research Engineer with TRC. I also have a mechanical engineering license, and I come from a background of HVAC and plumbing design.
Wonderful. And that is our round of staff who is here hosting our meeting today. So the goal of today's meeting is for audience members to learn about the proposed green building reach codes and provide feedback and input on the reach code options. Today's reach codes workshop will focus on the options for home renovations, and community feedback will be shared with the City Council. There are a variety of policies and ordinances and other types of efforts that can help decarbonize our community in addition to green building reach codes. The city plans to develop a decarbonization strategy that will evaluate different policies and approaches, but I want to emphasize that today's presentation will focus specifically on green building reach codes. So all attendees are muted by default. After the presentation, we have allotted time for Q&A. We do not have the chat function available, but we do encourage audience members to interact in two ways. You can use the Q&A function, which is here on the screen, to type in your question, and we will do our best to answer the questions that come in. Or you can raise your hand and a moderator will unmute you so you can verbally share your question or comment. And this would be during the Q&A section at the end of our meeting today. I encourage you to participate in either way that makes you feel more comfortable, whether that's typing your question or raising your hand. The agenda for today is tonight's presentation will review some background information on climate action and electrification. We will then discuss green building reach codes and the proposed reach code options for the upcoming code cycle, and then we will close with Q&A. Our meeting is scheduled to end around 8 p.m. And so first, I want to launch a poll to get to know the people in the room. There are currently 39 people in the room. So if you could just take the next 30 seconds to fill out this poll, that would be great. And I'll turn it over to Samantha to talk about our poll.
Yeah, hi, everyone. So hopefully you guys saw the poll pop up on your screen, and we just do this at all of our meetings to kind of gauge who's in the audience. So one of the first questions that we're asking is sort of your relationship to the City of San Mateo. We see some answers starting to come in. So if you're in attendance tonight, please take a couple quick moments to answer our poll. It really does help us as we analyze some of the data that we collect. We also have some other standardized demographic questions about your age group and which best describes your current housing situation, how concerned you are about climate change, and also how much have you heard, seen, or read recently about the City of San Mateo's green building reach codes. So we're going to leave that open for just a little bit longer. We're at about 60% participation. So if you can, please help us and share some information about what brought you here today and who you are in our community. So we see some responses coming in. It looks like we've got a nice range of folks who live in the city, a couple people who work in the city. We're at about 75% participation. So I'll go ahead and share the results with everybody. Last chance to fill it out if you haven't already. Okay, thanks. So there we go. As you guys can see, we've got about half of the folks in tonight's meeting who live in the city, about 12% who work in the city, 16% who live and work in the city, and then a number of folks who also visit San Mateo for shopping or dining and recreation. And our age groups, a couple folks under 18, which is always great to see some of our youth getting involved. We love that. And then about a quarter of us are between 25 and 40. About a third are 41 to 64, and another third are 65 years and older. About 80% own their homes and 16% pay rent. And then we've got 4% who are other. And then, as we probably all expected, about 84% are very concerned about climate change and 12% neutral. And it's nice to see that we also have a number of folks who've been following this issue closely, with 64% who have heard a great deal. And then also about 36%, a third, who have only heard about it a little. And I'm sure by the end of tonight's meeting, you'll know a lot more. So thank you guys all for doing that.
Great. So I wanted to start with a bit of background information and talk about climate action in San Mateo. The city of San Mateo, like most communities in California, is expected to experience multiple direct impacts as a result of climate change, including flooding, sea level rise, wildfires, drought, and extreme heat. Research suggests that California will experience hotter and drier conditions, reductions in winter snow, and increases in winter rain, an increase in occurrence of extreme weather events. Climate change is very real, and we are seeing those impacts every day. The City of San Mateo and the City Council has a strong history of prioritizing sustainability and climate action to mitigate for these climate change impacts and reduce greenhouse gas emissions community-wide. The city updated our climate action plan in 2020, and this document establishes goals to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and details strategies and measures that can help us achieve these goals. As part of our climate action plan update, a greenhouse gas emissions inventory was developed. The greenhouse gas emissions inventory reflects the emissions associated with everyday activities in our community, such as fossil gas used in buildings, miles traveled in vehicles, and waste sent to landfills. This snapshot of our 2017 emissions shows how transportation and the built environment account for most of our emissions in our community. On-road transportation refers to all the vehicle trips on local roads and state highways in San Mateo, and this accounts for 50% of our emissions. Today, we'll really be focused on the built environment, and the built environment refers to homes and buildings, and the emissions from the built environment includes electricity and fossil gas use. Residential built environment emissions accounts for 18% in San Mateo. So addressing building electrification and electric vehicle infrastructure through green building reach codes is a strategy in our climate action plan. And in addition, it is a city council priority to explore decarbonizing existing buildings and phasing out the use of fossil gas, which is also known as natural gas, in buildings by 2030. So now I'd like to hand it over to Blake to share about Peninsula Clean Energy and electrification and our electric grid.
Thank you, Andrea. For a little background about Peninsula Clean Energy, for those who aren't aware, we are San Mateo County's not-for-profit, locally led electricity provider, generating electricity, which is then delivered via PG&E wires to customers throughout the county. Our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding access to sustainable and affordable energy solutions. We help with technical support to cities considering reach codes, because reach codes reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is core to our mission. Next. As far as our energy mix and a reason to electrify, currently Peninsula Clean Energy's energy mix is virtually 100% carbon free and at least 50% renewable. A note here on the chart to the right, the California Public Utilities Commission expects methane gas prices to increase faster than electricity. The chart shows monthly water heating energy costs by fuel type. Using a heat pump water heater is expected to save even more money in the future than it does today. Next slide. So which appliances in our home are we talking about when we discuss building electrification? Our TVs are electric, our lights are electric. The appliances that are typically in a home that might be powered by fossil fuel are water heating, space heating, clothes drying, and cooking. On the right, you will see the typical home's usage breakdown, with the majority of gas use being water heating, followed by space heating. Now onto the health benefits of electrification. Interesting point, gas stoves in homes increase a children's asthma risk by 42%. Total electric living eliminates the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning, which often happens by poor fossil fuel combustion in a home. And a good point about induction ranges, they will automatically turn off when a pot is removed from the range, eliminating a leading cause of house fires. Next. Why heat pumps in particular? You're going to hear heat pumps mentioned in a lot of the proposed policy recommendations. Firstly, they're all electric, which means there is zero carbon when powered by renewable energy or carbon-free electricity. They're highly efficient. A heat pump is typically 4 times as efficient as its gas equivalent, and they're a proven technology. Over 12 million homes in the United States are currently heated with heat pumps. Resilience with wildfires and occasional power outages. The ability to use our equipment when the power is out is something that's brought up. At the top here, I have the type of electrification equipment that would be recommended for each of these appliances. And on the bottom, some notes about gas, that it's not always resilient. On the left, for space heating, the most common type of space heater in San Mateo County is a central furnace, which requires an electrically powered fan to operate, which cannot operate during a power outage. For water heating, gas water heaters often require electronic controls or ignition. Gas stoves will work, but it's highly recommended not to use them without the range being on. And then electric clothes dryer, gas clothes dryers will not work without electricity because they have an electric motor in the tumbler. Next. Big question is, can the grid handle load increases? I'll go through this quickly. The California Energy Commission expects, with aggressive electrification, 20% additional summer peak load. The electricity suppliers have a service obligation and fully expect to meet the needs that all electric buildings will require. The CEC has noted electrification as the lower cost, lower risk approach, and California is currently investing $30 billion in transmission investments to account for renewables and decommissioning of gas power plants. Next.
And that's Blake's piece on Peninsula Clean Energy and electrification. So I think I'm going to move along in our presentation and talk about green building reach codes. And I'd like to start with a bit of background. So California's building standards are updated every 3 years, and every local jurisdiction in California is required to adopt the new Building Standards Code. The Building Standards Code has a total of 12 parts, 2 of which are very critical to sustainability. They include the Energy Code and the Green Building Code. Cities have the option to adopt reach codes, which are local amendments to the building code that reach above and beyond state requirements. All of the reach codes that we will discuss today would amend the next building code cycle, which begins January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2025. The city cannot adopt amendments to future building codes, so not beyond 2025. The city has adopted REACH codes in the past. The city's current REACH codes impact new construction, and the requirements are to install solar on all building types that are not covered by the energy code. The city also requires the new construction of all electric residential buildings and all electric buildings with office use. And we also require a greater percentage of electric vehicle readiness than what is required by the state for all building types. These REACH codes will expire December 31st of this year as the current code cycle comes to a close. Proposed new construction REACH codes will focus on these same areas, building electrification and electric vehicle readiness. It is important to note that REACH codes for solar and battery storage are not a focus, since the 2022 State Energy Code has requirements for solar and battery storage for new construction. The workshop today will focus on proposed REACH codes for home renovations. So if you have comments on the new construction REACH codes, please reach out to me directly after this meeting. And now in this section of the presentation, I will review the proposed green building REACH code options for home renovations. All of the proposed REACH code options would be effective during this upcoming building code cycle, again, with that effective date of January 1, 2023. These proposed measures are all enforced at the time of permit. So in other words, they are triggered when someone is coming to the city to get a permit for a project. And all of the proposed measures focus on reducing the use of fossil gas and encouraging building electrification. Again, building electrification is extremely important because, as Blake talked about, natural gas or fossil gas is a fossil fuel, and our electricity has become very clean with Peninsula Clean Energy electricity. So decarbonizing existing building stock is key to reaching the city's ambitious climate goals. But when developing REACH codes for existing buildings, the city had to consider a variety of factors. So in terms of greenhouse gas emission reductions, the City of San Mateo is mostly built out. We know that new construction accounts for a small percentage of development. So we know we had to start looking at different home renovation projects and targeting greenhouse gas reducing measures in home renovations. The greenhouse gas emissions inventory showed that residential buildings account for slightly more emissions than non-residential buildings. And Blake reviewed how fossil gas is used in a typical home. So once I go through the proposed measures, you will see how staff prioritized focusing on space conditioning and water heating, the biggest uses of fossil gas in a home. We also looked at best practices in other cities. Requiring electrification through REACH codes is a relatively new approach, and only a few California cities have REACH code requirements for electrification in home renovations. It is also important to consider the impact of any potential requirements and the challenges with enforcement. The REACH code options that I will present are enforced when the city provides the permit. So staff are mindful of the importance of the building permit issuance process and the building inspection process that's here to ensure the health and safety of the community. The city relies on the permitting process to ensure gas and electric equipment are installed safely. And if REACH codes impose restrictions that the community members find too challenging or too costly to comply with, this might result in improvements being done without permits. Finally, staff also evaluated the cost to the property owner and the equity impacts of the potential REACH code requirement. Requiring electric equipment may increase upfront project costs and may also have an impact on long-term operational or utility costs. Upfront costs to convert to new technology and electric equipment is often the primary barrier for electrification in underserved communities. Someone who faces energy insecurity or the inability to pay for energy bills without a significant trade-off is not able to prioritize electrification. The city will need to be thoughtful about REACH code requirements to prevent negative impacts to underserved communities. So throughout my presentation, I will share the upfront and utility costs associated with the REACH codes compared to if these policies were not in place. So reach code option number 1, panel capacity for future electrification. This requirement is triggered by an upgrade or installation of a new electric panel and requires the reservation of breaker space for future electric equipment. Electrical capacity is key to future electrification of building systems. So by requiring reservation of breaker space when a property owner is already making changes to their electrical panel, gas equipment can more easily be converted to electric in the future. This is an approach the city of Piedmont has taken on, and they adopted this reach code in 2021. Piedmont staff noted that this project applicants are typically able to allot panel capacity and breaker space within the panel they are upgrading to, so not beyond their project scope. So staff estimates this measure would not add to the project costs given Piedmont's implementation. This is an electric readiness measure that prepares the property owner for future electrification of systems. So it doesn't result in some immediate emission reductions, but it makes electrification that much easier down the road. Reach code option 2 requires the installation of electrical outlets at the time of kitchen or laundry room renovation if a gas appliance is installed. This means that an outlet capable of serving electric equipment is located within 6 feet of the kitchen stove during a kitchen renovation and 6 feet of a clothes dryer during a laundry room renovation. This measure aligns with the 2022 state code update that will require pre-wiring in new construction when gas appliances are installed. It is estimated that the installation of an outlet for future electrification would add $500 to as much as $2,000 to the project costs. The costs are highly varied depending on the location of the electrical panel relative to the location of the renovation in the home. And costs are highly sensitive to material availability and inflation. Again, this is another electric readiness measure. So this measure doesn't directly result in emission reductions now, but it prepares that property owner for future electrification of systems that would result in emission reductions. Reach code option 3 requires the installation of a heat pump air conditioning unit at the time of installation of a new AC or replacement of an existing AC unit in conjunction with a gas furnace replacement at single-family homes and duplexes. So AC air conditioner condensing units are electric, but the requirement to install heat pump technology would electrify both the home's space heating and cooling. It is estimated that the installation of an AC condenser unit would cost $17,500 and the installation of a heat pump unit would cost $19,000. There is currently rebates available, including the Tech Clean California incentives that provide $3,000 rebates for residential heat pump units. So when the rebate is layered in, the heat pump option can be less expensive. What's shown on the slide though is without the incentive, the heat pump unit would cost $1,500 more compared to the gas option or the gas furnace with the AC condenser unit. If the homeowner is adding new AC and they didn't have AC before, their electricity costs would increase regardless of the equipment type. So when examining the utility bill impacts, we're comparing a gas furnace paired with an AC condenser unit compared to the heat pump option. Staff found varied results when it came to monthly utility bill impacts. One study estimated that homeowners would save $10 per month, while another study estimated homeowners would pay an additional $11 per month with a heat pump unit. So savings really range depending on the efficiency of equipment. Space heating accounts for 36% of fossil gas use in a typical household, representing a significant greenhouse gas emission savings opportunity. If adopted, the city of San Mateo would be the first city in California to adopt such a requirement for heat pump air conditioning. The city of Vancouver in British Columbia has such a requirement, and their requirement is slated to go into effect January 1 of 2023. Reach code option 4A would require the installation of electric or solar pool heating equipment when a new heated pool is installed at an existing residential building. If a pool is installed as part of the construction of a new residential building, the pool is already required to use electric equipment according to the city's current building electrification reach code. When it comes to costs, one study found that the heat pump pool heater would cost $800 to $1,300 more than the gas pool heater at the time of installation. But the study also found that the heat pump pool heater actually saves the property owner money, about $105 annually on utility bills, compared to the gas option. The city of Santa Monica has this requirement in place and has had this requirement since 2020. Electric pool heating would avoid 83% of emissions compared to the gas pool heating option. Though heat pump pool heaters are not a new technology, they currently represent a small market share in California, as most pools in California currently use gas pool heaters, but heat pump pool heaters are more popular in other markets, including in Florida. Reach code option 4B expands on reach code option 4A to touch on both pools and outdoor equipment. This option would prohibit the extension of fuel gas infrastructure into the backyard of an existing residence. So fossil gas infrastructure could not be used for pools, grills, and fire pits. In effect, this option would require electric or solar pool heating, but it would not allow the extension of fuel gas infrastructure for things like grills and fire pits. Property owners would still be allowed to use other fuel types for grills and fireplaces, such as propane or electricity. This requirement would prevent investment in the extension of fossil gas infrastructure, which is a costly project compared to propane and electric options for grills and fire pits. It could also potentially save the property owner money. The city of Palo Alto is considering adoption of this reach code option this year. Reach code option 5 would require the installation of a heat pump water heater if a water heater was replaced as part of an addition or alteration in a single family home. This measure does not impact all water heater replacements, but instead, this reach code intends to impact water heaters that are installed as a larger part of a project. The intent would be to impact projects that are not replacing the equipment of time of failure or in emergencies, allowing the project applicant to have more time to plan for electrification. It's estimated that a gas water heater replacement costs $2,500, an instantaneous gas water heater costs $5,500, and a heat pump water heater costs $7,000. So depending on the type of water heater you are replacing, your upfront costs could really range from an additional $1,500 to $4,500 more with a heat pump compared to the gas unit. This figure does not include rebates that are available for heat pump water heaters in San Mateo. There is a $2,000 rebate available. Ongoing operational costs are estimated to be about the same compared to the gas water heater option, or even potentially save you money. And then I should also mention that water heating accounts for the most fossil gas used in a typical home, 55%. So this is an important opportunity to reduce fossil gas use in residences. This is another reach code option that the city of Palo Alto is considering this year. In terms of process and timeline, I wanted to talk about where staff have presented the REACH code information. So the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission is an appointed body that serves as an advisory body to the City Council to advise on policies related to sustainability, transportation, and infrastructure. So in April and July of this year, staff presented REACH code information to this commission. Staff plans to present REACH code options, the feedback and direction received at the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, as well as community feedback that is gathered through tonight's meeting, and all of the comments that were emailed directly to staff. I also want to point out that we've launched an online survey to gather feedback to provide another option for attendees. The Zoom polls are really limited to allowing attendees to answer questions on a multiple choice basis. We're not able to accept long form text responses. So if meeting attendees are interested in submitting more written comments, a survey will be emailed to everyone who attended this meeting. All of this feedback will be presented to the City Council on September 19th. Depending on that City Council direction, staff will incorporate all of that feedback and develop an ordinance for hopeful adoption before the end of this year. And I'm reiterating again that proposed REACH codes would go into effect for the 2022 building code, which begins January 1 of 2023. There are a variety of approaches to decarbonize buildings beyond the green building REACH codes that I went over today. Staff plan to evaluate other building decarbonization approaches, including financing and rebates for electrification, home energy assessment requirements, commercial energy building performance standards, an end of a flow ordinance, carbon neutrality policies, and electric appliance upgrade requirements. I guess I should also point out that we intend to develop a strategic roadmap to decarbonize our community and then also evaluate and establish an end of flow target date. In the immediate term, it is critical that staff focus on local building amendments to optimize REACH code effectiveness. REACH code implementation and enforcement is integrated with our existing permitting process. So we're focusing on REACH codes because of the 3-year code cycle and the need to readopt the new construction REACH codes. Other policies that I shared here on the slide will require more evaluation and community input. In addition to REACH codes, I wanted to highlight just a few efforts. One is that staff launched the induction cooktop loaner program that allows residents to borrow a portable induction cooktop for 2 weeks. This program allows you to get hands-on experience with an induction cooktop before potentially converting from gas to electric. I wanted to mention the Switches On, which is a statewide effort to encourage electrification. Their website, which is www.switcheson.org, is an excellent resource to both homeowners and contractors and provides information about electrifying your home. And then there are electric equipment rebates, as I had mentioned, and those are available through the links shown on the slide. If you'd like to stay involved with REACH codes, these are the important websites to note. The city's REACH code website will continue to be updated as this process moves forward. I will also be posting a recording of this webinar to the website. I can also post the slides as well. If you would like to receive email notifications for sustainability updates and REACH codes, please go to the city's Notify Me website to sign up for sustainability programs and information. And you can also use this site to sign up for notifications regarding City Council meeting agendas and Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meeting agendas, if that interests you. And then alternatively, you can always use the public meeting portal to find out what is on any City Council meeting agenda or commission agenda. And that ends the planned presentation portion of our workshop. And now we're at Q&A. So again, I want to remind everyone that you can use the Q&A function to type in your question, and we'll also allow people to start raising their hands to provide their question verbally.
So Andrea, while we're waiting for people to raise their hands, we have received some questions through the chat that I'm going to pose, and either yourself or our representatives from PCE or TRC can maybe step in to help answer these. So one of the questions relates to potential federal financial incentives and how those might change the cost benefit analysis.
I can answer that one. We're very excited about the proposed Inflation Reduction Act incentives. We've been asking around about them, and it is our understanding that they will not be available in time for the January 1st proposed release of the ordinance. But we're watching them closely. I was last told to expect to wait about a year until the incentives are available.
Also, this is Farhad with TRC. So I'm an engineer. I'm not a tax expert by trade. So I'm actually going to maybe crowdsource a little bit here. If anybody's aware of the tax line sections and whether these are refundable tax credits. So they don't only apply if you owe taxes and reduce your tax liability, rather, are they refundable? That is a key question I'm trying to answer, and I'm not a tax expert, so please let us know.
Okay, well, moving on to some of the other questions. One is if somebody can talk a little bit about the financial hardship exemption and who that applies to and how that works in practicality.
So, sorry, was this one typed here? Would you mind?
Sorry, so a question was asked about whether the financial hardship exemptions would remove sort of the cost barriers. And so I am maybe more generalizing that question to maybe someone can provide a little bit more detail on what the financial hardship exemptions are and who they apply to, or how they work.
Right. Yeah. So that's it's something that we are still rulemaking, right? So that is intended to be a situation where somebody would demonstrate that the retrofit cost, including the electrical wiring, would be larger by maybe over 10%, sorry, 110% of the gas like for like cost. So that would be a bit of a threshold by which you could say, look, this is much more costly in my particular situation than a like for like system would be. And then that would go through a review process internal to the city. But that does require a bit of administrative coordination. Other types of financial hardships could be developed if there's an emergency type of situation where your water heater breaks, but it takes or this is general hardship, but the water heater breaks, it takes a couple of weeks to transition that to electric, or there may be financial hardship exemptions associated with affordable housing property owners, and we don't want to jeopardize necessarily the services that are being provided to the affordable housing tenants, or inadvertently cause an expensive project to impact the rent that those housing the tenants are paying. So we need more detail around this, and this is kind of just the first step. We'd love some further ideas around administrative processes around these types of exemptions.
Okay, thank you. And then the final question that I pulled out before we go to the live comments is, will the cost benefit equation that Andrea presented tonight, will that change with anticipated utility increases, specifically if the cost of gas increases considerably more than the cost of electricity?
Right, yeah, and I attempted to answer this in the chat here, but the bill impacts that were presented on these slides would include estimates of escalation rates over the next 15 to 30 years. So those are baked in. They are just estimates, so they may change with the release of these new federal incentives, these change the market in many different ways. So those escalation rates probably will need to be revisited sometime over the next year.
Okay, some great questions coming in over the chat. We've got a few folks with their hands raised, and so we are going to start letting people speak. If anybody's interested in speaking or has a question, please go ahead and raise your hand. I'll be able to allow you to talk when it's your turn, and then you can unmute yourself and say your comments. We want to make sure that we have time for everybody that has a question or wants to make a comment. So let's just all be mindful, because we do want to leave some time for everyone to take our final poll. And as Andrea mentioned, we will also have a survey that will go out to attendees and other members of the community who are interested in learning more or having another format through which they can provide their comments. So I'm going to do my best to keep us on track, and please just be mindful there are folks that want to talk. And of course, if someone else has already made a comment that you agree with, feel free to just say, I agree with that person, and we'll make sure to note that as well. So we're going to start with Susan Rowinski. I've gone ahead and allowed you to talk. If you can unmute yourself, Susan, thanks.
Brian, this is a, let me just lower my hand. This is a question for you. During the July SIC meeting, we were talking about the fact that heat pumps use compressors, and compressors use ozone depleting gases. And I think you mentioned that this type of ozone can in the heat pumps now are also ozone depleting. But the question I failed to ask back in July, I'm going to ask it tonight, is what's the city's plan in terms of disposal of heat pumps? Because we're talking about heat pump AC and heaters, dryers, pool heaters. So there's a lot of heat pump technology, but I'm sure the state or the city won't go live unless there's a way to manage heat pumps that need to be disposed of, much like what we do with refrigerators.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I could take a shot, and perhaps my colleagues will have also further input. So the main area of concern here is the refrigerants, which have currently the most of the refrigerants on the market have a high global warming potential. The fundamental thing that I'd like to share, and I can share a resource on this, is that electrification, even if all of those refrigerants were released into the atmosphere, electrification still has a dramatically lower greenhouse gas impact than business as usual with our gas appliances. So that's the first thing. Now, we obviously don't want those refrigerants to leak, and there's two approaches that we need to make sure to integrate. One is refrigerant capturing. So when a HVAC unit or a heat pump system is decommissioned, we need to capture that refrigerant, and that's something that we absolutely can do better. And the second thing is moving towards low global warming potential refrigerants. And this is an area where I believe the latest California budget bill invests something like $20 million to try to find out more about how we can integrate more of these low GWP refrigerants into our market. So this is an area of high concern, and it must be addressed. But in terms of the near-term steps, first we have to try to shift the ship in the right direction, and then we'll try to address these other very important concerns.
Right. So are you saying that we're selling these without any proper disposal?
I can answer that one. Peninsula Clean Energy, very important question. Peninsula Clean Energy does offer a program to recycle and dispose of appliances that have refrigerants in them. This includes refrigerators, air conditioners, and heat pumps. That's already available through Peninsula Clean Energy, and we recommend any constituent who would like to dispose of an appliance that has refrigerant to reach out to us, and we can make that happen.
Okay, great. So there is a process in place. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next we have Mark Hecht. And forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Mark Hecht, and I'm an apartment owner in San Mateo. first I want to commend you. I think this is a great webinar that you put on and very informative. My comment is a little bit off of the subject, but I did want to express this, and I think it'd be a good thing that possibly the city council is aware of all the apartment owners in San Mateo and the inability of them to put in charging stations in their units. I've been working with Peninsula Clean Energy on a project to install 2 level 2 chargers. And I've gone through all kinds of problems, not only with the building department, but also with the contractors to try to get the chargers up and going. If the city could facilitate that and do anything they could, I think if the apartment owners had chargers in there, there'd be more people driving around in electric cars. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Next, we have Michelle Hudson. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank all of the presenters tonight, and thank you so much to the City of San Mateo for addressing the incredibly important issue of reach codes and extending them to existing buildings. I agree that all of the measures that were presented on tonight should absolutely be implemented and adopted, but it really is the floor from where we should be starting. I ask that the city please consider adopting the full model reach code for existing buildings with an effective implementation date for existing buildings of December 31st, 2025, to give the city enough of a runway to develop all of the support programs that would ensure successful implementation of such an ordinance. And we just got some great help from the Inflation Reduction Act to make the funding and financing piece much more attractive to the city. And also breaking news today, it looks like Senate Bill 1112, Tariff on Bill Financing, is poised to go to the governor's desk shortly. There are many other funding and financing options, and we think that this is doable this year, and it does not need to be kicked down the road after October of 2022. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Next, we have Mary Rose LeBaron. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Mary.
Hi there. Thank you for holding this session. My comments are going to be a bit passionate, so please bear with me. I've listened in to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Committee meetings, and I just have a follow-up comment, because in regards to being first, a leader in decarbonizing existing buildings, and any hesitancy to doing so, we should be first because we can. All right. Many in San Mateo have privilege. We can use that. There is obvious funding to help get folks over the hump to make the cost of electric equal, if not less than gas powered. The urgency of acting is now, because we as residents of the earth have to think about the whole, right? In regards to cost and equity impacts, here we are dealing with the costs on our backs of stopping the gas flow to our homes. I'm sorry, but I think it is worth it. Have you seen Pakistan this week? How about, folks that are recovering from Katrina still, and folks in Lake Charles? The people who have added less than 1% carbon to the atmosphere are paying all the costs. Loss of life to complete loss of shelter and drinking water. If we think our community is immune to disaster like this, we are mistaken, and we better get with the physics of climate change, right? We have to do what we can. What the heck are we thinking if we quibble about the emergency and the costs?
Okay, thank you, Mary. I know this is definitely a very passionate issue for a lot of people, which we absolutely appreciate. And And there's a number of, formats for people to share those opinions. And I know tonight we're also very interested in hearing everyone's feedback on these specific REACH codes, but thank you very much for sharing your input. It is very valuable. Next, we have Laura Mcdowell. Laura, if you can go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Mcdowell, a San Mateo high schooler and a member of San Mateo Youth Climate Action. From a young age, I noticed how easy it was for leaders in local, state, and federal governments to dismiss the threat of climate change. As I got older, this became incredibly distressing. The risk of passing the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius is nearing, and our window for plausible and impactful climate action is shortening. This reality should not have to shock us into changing our laws and habits, because our generation, my generation, and generations moving forward will have to struggle with these preventable impacts. I want to thank the City of San Mateo for taking the steps to consider these building REACH codes. Almost half of all greenhouse gas emissions in San Mateo come from buildings, and requiring the electrification of appliances that need to be replaced within these buildings within the next couple years will greatly reduce these numbers. As we know, gas appliances do not only contribute to climate change by emitting greenhouse gases into our environment, but natural gas burning home appliances negatively impact our respiratory health as well. I strongly encourage the committee to adopt the Bay Area REACH codes model for existing buildings. It is a healthy and responsible step forward towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our community. In addition, adopting this model will pave the way for other local governments to adopt a similar model to reduce the impacts of climate change within the Bay Area and our broader communities. Thank you.
Hey, Samantha, I'm going to interrupt and elevate one of the questions that was brought up in the Q&A. So it's a question that says, it would be helpful, or comment, it would be helpful to receive information specifically for multifamily buildings, as any electrification proposal could trigger a full-scale rehab, especially to older buildings. Wanted to pause and talk about that comment for a second. I know, so I presented on 5 different measures that impact different building types. There are 2 measures in particular that would impact all residential buildings. So REACH code option 1, which is the, I guess I can scroll quickly back to it. Give me one moment. This is one of the REACH code options that would impact all residential buildings. So it's requiring panel capacity for future electrification. So that's one of them. And the other options focus on other building types like single family homes for the REACH code option 2. REACH code option 3 that focuses on heat pump AC is for single family homes and duplexes. And then these 2 REACH code options that are, I've labeled 4A and 4B because they are kind of complementary. They would impact all residential buildings. So again, requiring all electric pools or solar water heating for pools, or prohibiting fuel gas infrastructure into the outdoor areas of a multifamily building. So I hope that helps talk about what would impact a multifamily building.
Great, thank you, Andrea, for clarifying that, because I know there's a couple interested parties who have larger residential buildings in our audience. Next, we have Bruce Nagel. I've gone ahead and allowed you to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and the work that was put in by the staff. It shows a lot of thought on this. I have 2 sets of comments. The first is that by us being leaders, we will help ourselves, and we need to think about this a little bit. And that's the fact that in order for the climate change to be modified and fixed, it has to happen around the world. As has been stated here, especially by Mary Rose, we have the resources to do it here. If we don't do it quickly, we're not going to be able to spread it to the rest of the world. And it's not going to make very much difference if we don't eventually get to the point of getting Pakistan to be stable, because if they still have climate crises, then it's a problem. So I think we really need to think about moving ahead with the being an early adopter, because for selfish reasons for us is that it'll accelerate the process for the entire world. Without that, we won't get there. The second thing is that has been mentioned that we need to address multifamily buildings. There are a large percentage of the buildings in this area, and we need to ensure that we have EV charging inside of them. There, as Mark Hecht brought up, there are some challenges that we need to work through, and we need to figure out what they are because we have a real need to address that. And the income levels of the people that are in multifamily housing are generally lower, and we will not serve that community to move them to electric cars unless we put in provisions that allow them to be able to charge their cars at home, which is the most convenient way to do it from a load balancing. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to talk on this subject.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Next, we have Dashiell Leeds. And again, Dashiell, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself now.
Hi, my name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the conservation organizer for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. I'd just like to echo the concerns of community members who want the REACH code to go further than it already does. And I think our aggressive measures are a way of future-proofing San Mateo against the liabilities, both cost and public health liabilities that come with keeping around and expanding gas infrastructure. With the passing of the IRA, there's going to be even more financial options available, and the Bay Area REACH codes, model REACH code for existing buildings already has equity protections built into it that are robust. So I really hope that you include this model code as a menu option for council to easily select when it comes back to them, because with the Inflation Reduction Act passing, it's possible that the vote could change. And I would love to see climate action continue on as swiftly and aggressively as possible. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Sean. I've gone ahead and allowed you to talk, Sean. Thanks.
Thank you. So listen to everyone, and I'm going to seem like the complete ogre here. So first of all, let me start by saying I've got 26 solar panels on. I've got a heat pump that's coming shortly. Got an electric car. I got a level 2 charger. Hey, hooray for the planet. That being said, there's so many things that are wrong with this that it's just got to be shut down or dramatically changed. Give you a couple examples why I say this. The first is that we're tying this more and more to an electrical model, and long-term, that's a great thing. But right now with my solar panels, 26 solar panels, even with an annual true-up, I've got about a $2,000 per year true-up. So right now, the utility companies keep trying to change this to a monthly true-up, where basically you zero out the bill at the end of every month. You can't make any profit from it. So basically, the true-up at the end of the year is going to go up by a couple thousand years, if you do it monthly. So this is just one way that you're going to get hurt on this with the rates going up in electricity. The second thing is that the Public Utility Commission is not giving us a stable model for how we can proceed with net metering 3, net metering 4, 5, 6 going down the road, whatever you're going to have. So we're getting kind of married to the hip to our utility companies, which really are not operating in a good faith measure with us. This is not a good thing. And another thing I'd like to comment about this is that there's so many things on here that you're mandating for people who want to renovate. I just pulled a permit for my second renovation here. I'm going to do and if I had done some of these, if some of these were in here, if I hadn't done these already, I would just be crapping my pants over this. This is just way too unreasonable. And to say that it's unneeded is how to say this. Right now, you're saying you want to have a level 2 charger installed in every renovation. You want the panel upgraded. But wait a second. What if we look at the new technology that's coming? Hydrogen cars are not that far along. Once people have hydrogen cars, they're not going to need a level 2 charger. But hey, the reason we're putting in the increased panel size is so that we can have the 30 amp level 2 charger. So right there, there's a couple $1,000. Actually, by my estimate, it's about $5,000 because I've already done this. I know what it costs. And you're basically forcing people to pay $5,000 for something that might not really be the optimal solution 5 years from now. This is not the way to go. Eliminate that right now. Additionally, people might want to have like a UL 1741 type vehicle down the road. So it's I served on ad hoc UL committee several years ago, and I know there's technologies out there where you can use an electric car if it was slightly modified, so you could actually use it as the battery backup for your house. Okay, and it could backfeed your house and do this. But if you're forcing people to use an inferior solution like a level 2 charger where that's all it is, you're kind of painting a picture. You're basically forcing people to waste money on somewhere it's not the optimal solution. It's just not the way to go. And another thing I'd like to say about all this is that I'm just looking through this, even the ridiculously low level of dollars that you have put in your estimates of what these things cost. I don't know where you're getting these numbers from, but I mean, I'm going through the bids right now. These are not realistic numbers. And so there's got to be some cap. It's, you know, if someone said, hey, look, I've done $10,000 worth of effort, left me off hook, leave me alone. At what point say enough is enough for a renovation? Because if you make this too high, guess what's going to happen? You're just going to have people in the background who are doing, renovations without permits, causing danger to the neighborhood themselves. You got to be a little more realistic about this. It's not a good thing to go off and say, hey, we're going to save the planet in an uncoordinated fashion. You know, this is something that should be doing at the state or the federal level. It is not the place of a city to drive national policy. I know I'm a complete ogre on this, but you know, if you're on the military field and you got 3 soldiers that want to run out their head because hey, they got the vision of what to do it, it's just going to be a mess. This is not. You've got to taper this back a little bit. And so, if nothing else, is there at least going to be some threshold for a remodel? Like if it's below $50,000, you don't have to do this. If it's above 200,000, you do. I mean, we have something similar with the sewer laterals. You know, right now, I think if a sewer lateral, if a renovation is below 50,000 or something like this, you don't have to do the sewer lateral problem. But you know, if you're gonna make, hey, someone's replacing a window, but hey, they got to go change the sewer lateral, or they got to upgrade their panel. You know, this is not realistic. So I don't know what the threshold is, but I hope it's.
I'd love to jump in and kind of respond to the two questions you raised head on so that I can be clear about the proposed requirements and when they are triggered, because you did mention some cost thresholds and I appreciate your attention to the cost. So I want to get to your other question, which is where did these cost estimates come from? So I'm going to run back through my slides again, because again, I presented 5 very different reach code options that are triggered at different times, and they're triggered depending on the scope of the project, not necessarily by a dollar threshold of a renovation. So in this particular project, is triggered by a panel replacement or upgrade. In this project, it's triggered by kitchen or laundry room renovations. This reach code option is triggered by the installation or replacement of an air conditioner in conjunction with a gas furnace replacement. And 4A and 4B are triggered by new pools or prohibiting the extension of fossil gas infrastructure for things like outdoor kitchens or fire pits. And then the last one is an addition or alteration project that includes a water heater replacement. So all of these options were structured in a way to thoughtfully require electric technology or electric readiness when there is a strong nexus or overlap with the project scope. So I'll highlight here how in this water heater measure, the intention is to impact projects, specifically addition and alteration projects that are coming to the counter with a water heater replacement as part of their project scope. Then the city would require that water heater be a heat pump water heater. So that's one example. I'd love to put maybe Farhad or Blake on the spot to talk about the cost effectiveness studies that I referred to. And that's, you know, it's the cost effectiveness studies as well as Peninsula Clean Energy's research and direct contractor outreach to figure out those cost estimates that I shared on our slides.
I'm happy to answer that one. This is Blake with Peninsula Clean Energy. We worked closely with TRC to review the existing statewide cost effectiveness studies, but also noticed that some of the numbers were a little low regionally. So in addition, we've interviewed contractors, reviewed dozens of quotes and hundreds of projects that have been incentivized in the county to get a firmer feeling on the actual costs locally. It's really important to us to get those right.
Great. I feel like I'm sorry, go ahead. Someone else gonna share?
Yeah, this is Jose. Yeah, and so I worked on I worked with Blake closely on some of those cost estimates, and yeah, I think that I understand the concern, and from, you know, I think that we're definitely aware of the impacts of cost on people who are doing these renovations, and have, you know, putting a lot of thought into making sure that these numbers are representative.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for answering those questions from Sean. Next, we have Robert White here, and I just want to do a quick time check because we want to make sure we have some time for everyone to take the poll that we'll have at the end. So let's just continue to be mindful of everyone's time so everyone has a chance to speak. And Robert, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this session and all the hard work of city staff. I think what you propose is a really good start, but to talk about what Dash talked about, it's only a start. Before I go on to what I wanted to say, I just want to say the staff numbers on dollars are good. I know, because I just completely electrified my home, and I would be happy to show invoices and bills paid to city staff to verify the costs that they have presented in their slides are reasonable. I want to get off the subject just slightly because today I walked through the spectacular brand new Burrell Park in my neighborhood. It is a wonderful accomplishment by the City of San Mateo and the agencies that provided grants. I bring this up because the park proves how much the city can accomplish, and the same hopefully will be said of the electrification movement. While staff has been working hard to prepare some basic starting points, these are not enough, and this city is capable of so much more. And as Michelle stated, we are restating our position. We still require asking for new construction to be fully electrified effective July 1st, 2023. But we are asking now that all permitted replacement of gas, not just the ones proposed by staff, in homes and businesses be effective December 31st, 2025. What that accomplishes is that every replacement of a gas appliance or a gas piece of equipment is replaced, and you will be able to do that within the REACH code that you're currently considering. I want to just thank all that you've done. It's a lot of work. I also want to know that you all to know that over the weekend, 20 of us walked door to door throughout San Mateo in 2 precincts. And what we found is that we had meaningful conversations about the clients, about the climate. But one thing stood out for us loud and clear. San Mateo residents wish to electrify their existing homes as soon as possible in response to the climate crisis. They don't want to wait 3 years. They want to get on with it now. What you're proposing to do can be improved if you accept our recommendation to electrify all replacement effective December 31st, 2025. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all your hard work.
Great, thank you, Robert. Next, we have Diane Bailey. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Diane.
Good evening. My name is Diane Bailey. I'm with a community climate action organization called Menlo Spark, and I really just want to lift up the comments of others, Robert, Michelle, and other residents who are very much in support of the REACH code options presented here today, but viewing them as a floor, or maybe more of a basement. There's so much more that we can do. And knowing the direct health impacts of gas appliances, it feels like it's really incumbent on us to do everything we can to try to prevent any new gas appliances from getting installed. And so we really just can't wait for that portion of the discussion, talking about requiring electric appliances upon replacement, talking about the end of gas flow. Phasing out gas is coming, and we really need to be talking about it as a community and doing all that we can to help people make this transition. And the last point I want to note is that the Inflation Reduction Act is settled law. It was signed by the president. And so I think it's not that helpful to kind of call it into question or tag it as being proposed. It's settled law. The $14,000 per qualifying household is coming in 2023. That's next year. And whether that money is available at the end of 2023 or in the beginning, it doesn't matter that much, because I think that we know now that huge amounts of funding is coming for every family. And most importantly, the largest instant discounts are specifically for low-income families. And so I think that we need to start incorporating that information into slide decks and getting the information out to folks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Next, we have Robert Gould. And before I allow you to talk, Robert, we've got a number of more folks who have their hand raised. Again, we do want to make sure we have time to get you guys all the poll, which we're going to issue at 7:50. And we're able to stay on for a couple minutes after, but please, again, just be mindful that there are people who might have some questions that they want to have answered by some of our panelists. So if you don't have a question necessarily, if you can hold off a little bit so we make sure we get to those questions and then the poll, that would be very much appreciated. And Robert, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, if that being the case, I was going to speak strongly in support of the strongest reach code. Should I wait for questions and come back?
That would be great, Robert. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Okay, thanks. Next, we have Elaine Salinger.
So I was actually going to also speak in favor of the strongest reach codes. Let me just say that eventually there will be a price on carbon from the federal government as climate change becomes worse. And when that happens, the price of oil, of natural gas will go up significantly. And if lower income people have not made the switch when rebates are available, they will suffer more than most. So I also want to say that we have solar panels and our electricity, and we charge 2 electric cars, and our electricity bill is teeny tiny.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Next, we have Jaden. You can go ahead and unmute. Are you there, Jaden?
Wait, can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. Anyways, my name is Jaden Wan, and I'm a high school student in San Mateo, as well as a member of the San Mateo Youth Climate Action Group. First off, I'd like to express my appreciation to the committee for hosting this event and being receptive to the things we have to say, especially with regard to the electrification of buildings in San Mateo. As a sort of background, I grew up in San Francisco, so pretty close to the ocean. I've always been calmed by the water, just like watching the waves go back and forth, right? But when I look at the same ocean right now, what enters me isn't necessarily calmness, but rather restlessness. It's this restlessness for the future. To think that this expansive and diverse city filled with business and opportunity and families could all be underwater not so long from now, it's terrifying. And while something like the Bay Area reach codes for new construction and existing buildings might not seem to immediately address the issue of rising sea levels, it really does, surprisingly enough. See, replacing a single gas appliance with, say, an electric one seems kind of simple, maybe even insignificant. But take that and try to up the scale, right? You go from a single appliance to a whole home, from one home to a city, from a city to a state to a nation, from a nation to a world. That's what we're capable of, right? And moving towards the future doesn't mean to mean big leaps of faith. Moving towards the future means taking it step by step. So I urge the committee to take that step. Adopt the Bay Area reach codes and help our planet. Help our planet, not just for us, but also for the next generations. We won't be the last people on this planet, so why hold anything back while we still have the chance to make a difference? Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. And next we have Brett Anderson. You can go ahead and unmute Brett.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's great to see what San Mateo is looking at as far as reach codes. I'm from Palo Alto, from the flood zone in Palo Alto, and I'm looking at the bay often, also near San Mateo, where I windsurf and have to now use a ladder to climb over the seawall they've built there at the launch. And I'm even afraid that the seawalls that we're building now were engineered to go to probably handle maybe 2 degrees warming, but we're on a track to go much higher than that. So all of our big projects may be for naught and have to be redone very soon if we don't get really serious about stopping gas use. So it's great to see that you're doing some of the similar things that we're working toward in Palo Alto, including, your options 3 and 5 for electric only replacements when it's an AC unit or a renovation that requires the replacement of a water heater. I think we're doing similar things in Palo Alto, but we're also trying to push even harder for a practical program that could get us along the lines of the Bay Area REACH codes to say introducing a systematic replacement in 2026. And that would be to look at installations that are already cost effective, like heat pump water heaters in garages, where we can already characterize the costs and a cost effective solution there. We may as well put that as on the starting plate for moving ourselves to a comprehensive existing building program to stop the installation of these new gas devices, because those are really going in at a rapid rate every day. And those are big investments for folks, and they're at risk now because the heating technology with gas is obsolete. The climate goal that you've set in San Mateo and what we've set in Palo Alto, and the rising tide of support for aggressive reductions within the next 10 years makes all these investments in gas devices very risky. And they do not provide as much benefit on almost all the measures that count as electric solutions. So I think it's incumbent upon cities to really communicate that clearly to its residents and provide programs that make it easy for them to avoid installing new gas devices. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brett. So it's 7:50. I think what we're going to do, and Robert, you're definitely still on my list. I want to make sure we get to your comments, but I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. We're not ending the meeting yet, but we just want to make sure we provide folks who are here tonight enough time to take the poll if they want to tonight. Again, as Andrea mentioned, we will have a survey that will be going out that you could opt to take instead. There are some similar questions. So Andrea, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll, and then after maybe we walk through that, we can go back to Robert and a couple of the other questions that we have.
Great. So as Samantha launches the poll, the questions ask about the specific REACH code options that were presented today and asks for your general feeling about the REACH code options. And then we have 2 other questions at the bottom. I pointed out earlier that Zoom is limited to a multiple choice. So unfortunately, you're not able to type as a response here. And that is why we are offering the survey as an option to provide more of a written response. You can also always email me comments if you prefer that to be your form of comment. And it's not expected that you provide comment in all of these ways. I wanted to allow multiple options to provide feedback. So if you shared your input by raising your hand today, like you don't need to repeat those comments again in an email. If you are responding to the poll and feel content there, you don't need to respond to the survey also. So it's really up to you. The survey link will be emailed to you tomorrow. And I believe as you exit the Zoom tonight, it'll take you to the survey, but you'll have multiple ways to get to the survey. We'll also link to it on the REACH Codes website. And I think I'll end there and let's go back to our speakers to hear the rest of the comments.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrea. Robert, thanks so much for being patient. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and please share your thoughts.
Sure, thank you. And my name is Dr. Bob Gould. I'm a professor at UCSF working in the program on reproductive health and the environment. Also colleagues within California Medical Association within San Mateo County. In general, strongly support the sort of efforts that have been illustrated here tonight. So just to start off, I just want to express my great appreciation for the presentation that was made, the work of Peninsula Clean Energy and other folks who I think have been very thoughtful about sketching out options that we have. I'm here speaking on behalf of San Francisco Bay Physicians for Social Responsibility, which I'm president of, and we represent hundreds of physicians and other health professionals in the San Francisco Bay Area, and being mindful of all that's in our face in terms of climate impacts. We tonight and have strongly supported the strongest possible measures that we can have towards moving towards alternative energy and electric replacement of gas and things like that that people have spoken tonight very eloquently about because of the profound health issues that we face. So accordingly, I just wanted to just briefly second what many people have said, which is the basically to call for to support a full model code for existing buildings when the time of adoption in October of this year, with an effective date of January 1st, 2023 for new construction, and an effective date of January 1st, 2026 for existing buildings. As quickly as we can go, I think is key for us. And I would echo what Diane Bailey said in terms of that we could really, hopefully garner as much of the expected money from the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to fund this. And I would just urge you all to work as strongly as you can to get as much of that cash to make these transformations, and to underscore other people's comments as well about the real need to prioritize equity considerations in terms of making these transformations available for everybody, and renters and those who can't really at this point afford these types of transformations. We have to give everybody a clear playing field for the green economy that we're trying to build. So again, I'll just close with that and really thank you for the time to speak tonight.
Thank you very much, Bob, or Dr. Gould. We appreciate your input. Next, we have Wendy Chow. Wendy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. I'll be quick. As a resident of San Mateo and a parent who is extremely concerned about climate change, I'd just like to echo many other voices we've heard in this room today. Michelle, Robert, Mary Rose, all of us support the strongest possible reach codes for decarbonizing our existing buildings in San Mateo. And, with climate change, I feel that you pay now or you pay later, and we can't afford to be in a situation of trying to figure out the costs of wildfire, smoke, flooding, devastating extreme heat, all the health impacts from gas that Dr. Gould was just mentioning. That's just not a cost that I think we want to bear. So thank you so much for hearing my comments.
Thank you, Wendy. And next we have Rick Ballard. And again, apologize if I mispronounced your name. You can go ahead and mute yourself, Rick.
Hi, so my name is Rick Ballard. I'm a homeowner and actually a very old single family house in San Mateo. And I strongly support all the proposed reach codes. I'm actually right now embarking on a significant renovation and came to the conclusion that converting to full electrification is right now both feasible and important. The technology has matured sufficiently, and getting this into my plans, working with my architect, is not an extraordinary or especially complicated modification to the plans to go full electric. So I really appreciate that the city has come to the same conclusion. I think it's the time it's going to take to convert all our residential fossil fuel infrastructure is a huge challenge. So adding any new dependence on fossil fuel infrastructure now or refreshing that dependence as homes renovate would dig us deeper into the problem. So this is the time for people to make the change. I think it's really, really important for a climate future. I also really appreciate the call outs to equity and the thoughts about how to make sure that this does not impose an undue cost burden or cause people to go do work without permits. So I strongly support both the measures proposed, investigating further measures, and a continued look at equity issues to make sure we can actually do this in the way we'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I see Sean has his hand raised again. Sean, did you have another question you want to follow up on?
Yeah, so Andrea cut me off last time, so I didn't really get an answer to two of my questions. So as far as like if you look at the the need to upgrade the panel in the level 2 charger. Would this be waived, or could this be waived if people were buying a hydrogen car, seeing as that's kind of the impetus, one of the main reasons that you would do this? Because that's a waste of about $5,000 there if you don't really need to do it and you're getting a hydrogen car. And the second question is that because of the dependence with utility companies, would there be any triggers in this that basically allow this to be rolled back a little bit if we do go to monthly true ups, or if the situation utilities gets increasingly hostile? And I'll just stop there.
So for your first question about level 2 charging, the electric vehicle requirements that I briefly mentioned earlier were specifically for new construction. So they don't apply to home renovations. I think maybe a related reach code option that I did talk about was the reach code option 1, which I'm showing again on the slide, that requires panel capacity for future electrification and reservation of breaker space for future electric appliances. So I hope that demystifies that part of your question. So we are not requiring the installation of a level 2 charger in an existing building. None of the home renovation reach codes require that. Sean, I'd love for you to respond here to make sure I'm responding to your question.
I believe I'm muted.
Oh, no, I hear you.
Okay. Okay, I accept that answer. That's good.
Okay.
But
So
even with that, even for new houses, people, if people are going to be putting in improved technologies like hydrogen, once again, it's kind of a waste of money. But on to the other thing is what protection we have if our relationship with the utility sours. And it's not unfeasible for that to happen. We're kind of in a bad state with public utility commissions, the way they're looking out for us as solar providers here. So I feel very vulnerable in this regard.
Okay, and then great. I understand now your feedback for the level 2 charging, and yeah, correct. There's no current waiver if you have a hydrogen car and you're for a new construction project. So I'll definitely note that feedback. And then I would love to turn it to either of my colleagues to maybe help.
And before you
provide
turn it over, can you just confirm that you did get my comments in writing to your email? Maybe you can just confirm that, but I would like to hear. If
I
we
did.
have any
I'm sorry, I
protections
wasn't
against
able
utilities
to
there.
read them yet, but I did. I just saw an email come through.
Okay, good enough. But yeah, I just want to make sure that if the Public Utility Commission does not protect us, that hey, some of this needs to be revisited.
Great. Blake and Farhad, offer any thoughts about the utility question?
Yes, I'll answer that. The California Public Utility Commission is there to protect us. We watched closely the NEM debate over the last year and haven't taken a stance on that. And it is important to have reliable electricity going into the future that is also affordable. And it is the mandate of the utility is required to provide that. In this case, PG&E being the utility to provide electricity.
I agree, but once again, we're a city. We don't control what's going on in the state with the Public Utility Commission. And if we're just shooting ourselves in the foot here, we're not coordinating with what's going on in the bigger picture. And I'm very worried about that. Apologies for the dog.
I can speak a little bit. There is a broader set of policies that the state is looking at for decarbonization via Assembly Bill 3232 at a minimum, but there's several state level policy workshops that look to existing building electrification as a very important, the most important way to achieve California's climate goals. The independent system operator has put in funding for new transmission lines to deliver utility scale renewables throughout the state and the Western United States. California Air Resources Board, Department of General Services, all of these agencies are coming to this conclusion. The California Public Utilities Commission has had several workshops and rulemakings around tariff on bill financing and equitable decarbonization. So I definitely don't want the impression here to be that San Mateo is acting in isolation, and that this is not a well-planned or coordinated effort. This is San Mateo is being a leader at a local level in response to the state level studies that are coming out in the direction the state's taking.
Okay, so I want to make sure we give everyone another quick second to answer the poll if they haven't already, because we're going to go ahead and close it. So if you haven't taken the poll, again, as Andrea mentioned, there will be another survey that you can take with more open-ended answers. And with that, I'll go ahead and share the results. I know we're really tight on time. We have a couple more hands raised, so if we can get to just those last two questions in a couple minutes, we can do that. And we have Henry McDaniels. Henry, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi. So I would actually might be able to answer Sean's first question on level 2 charging. In the unlikely scenario, hydrogen cars do succeed, probably there will be a reach code in about, I don't know, 2060 if they do succeed in that time period, because right now it's looking like battery electric cars will completely, utterly succeed instead. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, well, Samantha, thank you so much for sharing the poll. This was, again, just one way that we were collecting feedback from this meeting. We're taking notes, and I'll be summarizing the comments and questions that were asked today for City Council at the September 19th City Council meeting. I already kind of reviewed the ways you can stay involved with this effort. I very much appreciate all the comments and the questions that were raised today. If you have additional questions that we weren't able to get to, you can reach me directly. I'm showing my email address now on the slide. But I think I'll take this moment just to thank everyone for attending and for your participation, and close our webinar this evening as we are at 8:05. So thank you so much for joining us, for being engaged and sharing your thoughts. So if you have other feedback, again, you can use that survey if you'd like to share information. And if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. And I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. I think we'll go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and then we can end the webinar.
Good night, everyone.